Morning. This is a video talking about parenting. At the moment there's an awful lot of change going on, all sorts of stuff that we can't control, and being out of control can make people feel out of control, and it can be very uncomfortable. And parenting, I wrote a post yesterday, and it's a bit like we're having to constantly evolve as parents. Nothing is static, and I think that's true of life, but within parents it's very obvious. Children go through many different stages developmentally when they're very young. You see them, teething, you see them being able to make eye contact, being able to focus, lift their heads up, crawl, walk. There's all those different stages to adapt to, and you have to keep adapting. You have to make the environment safe, you have to change how you are with them. Then they start nursery, and that starts the letting go process, which can be really, really difficult. And then it goes on, they go on to school, and then they go from school, primary school to high school, and that is a massive change again. They're often independent, they start going to school on their own, coming home, having a key. You don't know who their friends are, who they're mixing with. There's all these things that are going on as a parent. You're having to adapt constantly. And then they get to their older teens when they start focusing on their peers even more. They go to the rooms a heck of a lot. I've said to teenagers who I work with, it must be against the European Human Rights Act for them to stay in a little tiny room with very little light on their computers all day. If we made them do that on their phones, they would be kicking up a fuss, but they choose to do that, and it's all part of separation from parents and beginning to go into their own little world as becoming adults. And it's hard, and as parents you have to constantly adapt because they're doing their natural process, but we're having to sit back and think about how we are as parents, where our children are developmentally, what they need, what they're going to need, how to best interact with them. And over the summer I've done a lot of thinking about this, and I'll probably be talking about it a bit. And I have a complex child who has attachment needs, as does my sister. And we were both saying that really, now that they're in their my niece is 18, nearly 19, my son's 17, nearly 8, won't be 18 next year. They're young adults, but emotionally they can be a lot younger. But you still have to keep adjusting and moving with where they want to be. And as an attachment figure, you just become, well, as a parent you're annoying anyway, but as an attachment figure parent, you just absolutely blow their brains. They don't have anything to do with you. So they become very, very resistant to anything. And what I've realised is the more I try and be helpful, because I try and be helpful and give all my words of advice, the more I antagonise. And what I'm having to take a real stock of myself is that I need to stand back and listen more, be a bit more curious, and hand over the advice role to somebody who's more equipped to do it, who is less involved in that headbutting phase that's going on. And I think this is probably same that's true for all parents who've got teenagers, but certainly with children with additional needs or attachment issues. We have to take stock and work out how we can be different, because we have to try and enter their world. So it's a learning process, and it's adaptation, and it's moving, and we've got to be fluid. But we, as parents, I took some time out with my sister for a few days in the Lake District, and I think it's about giving yourself that space to think, if you can. Obviously it's not easy, but if you can find it in some way, to think about how you are as a parent, what effect you're having. Are you still being effective with what you're doing, or do you keep running up against that stone wall that keeps hitting you back? Do you need to change the way that you are in order to try and be alongside your child? And that can be quite tough, because it doesn't make you feel particularly good about yourself. And it's also not necessarily being the parent that you thought you would be. I'm hoping that with the changes that I'm making, that I will be able to have a better relationship with my son, and eventually the warring will naturally decrease as he gets a bit older, but that we will have a relationship that's less adversarial, is what I'm hoping, by standing back a little bit. So I'm not saying that you stop caring or you stop being there. You have to be a constant present for children. I think that's the whole about attachment, roots, that they feel safe, wings that they can fly, but they also need like a landing base to come back to. So if they feel that things aren't going well or they need help, they have a secure base to come back to that's there all the time. And that's basic parenting. So you have to keep that and try and keep that relationship, but sometimes we have to change what we do in order to try and be around these teenagers who are becoming adults. Let go but remain present. So it is hard, and my sympathy goes out to all parents who are going through all these different stages, whether it's as young ones, school age, teenage, whatever it is. It's really hard, and there's no handbook, and each child is different. You know, I have 3 and none of them have gone through the same thing at the same time in the same way. They all need different things. So nobody at all can sit there and be an authority on what you need to do. And all I would say is just be kind to yourselves and take the time to kind of examine things without overly criticising yourself, and just see what you can change and shift. And if you need some advice or to talk that through with someone, then contact me, contact a life coach, contact a therapist. Sometimes it helps to bounce off ideas, because we do get very stuck. But you're not alone. And this too will pass, because it's a phase. And I think that's one of the things I keep saying to myself, it's all a phase. Everything is a phase in life with children, and it all changes. So hopefully, if we can hold that, we can get through all this. Anyway, contact me if you need any support, because it's really hard.